So let's bring this meeting to an open. According to my clock, it's 6 o'clock. The city's clock is 6:04. So we'll open the regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting for July 24th for the city of Ridgecrest. Roll call, please.
Chairman Cox.
Here.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam.
Here.
Commissioner Yates.
Here.
Commissioner Ferris.
Here.
Commissioner Dehan. Here. 5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Would you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? And Lauren, would you lead again, please?
Yes, please rise, face the flag, hand over your heart, and repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You can be seated. Do I have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
I so move.
Second?
Second.
Chairman Cox.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Yates.
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris.
Aye.
Commissioner Dehan. Aye. 5 ayes. Motion carries.
Okay, moving on, the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion with the correction provided?
So moved.
Second?
Second. Chairman Cox.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Yates.
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris.
Aye.
Commissioner Dehan. Aye. 5 ayes. Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move into the public comment section. Persons wishing to address the Commission on matters that are within the Commissioner's jurisdiction and do not already appear on the agenda may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the Planning Commission may not take action on an item that does not appear on this agenda. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. The public comment section of the agenda is limited to a total of 1 hour. Each speaker is asked to provide his or her name and address. We will now open it for public comment. Well, I wonder if you know why I gathered you here today. Seeing that there's nobody running to the microphone, we will close the public comment section at 6:06 and move on into our public hearing. Chair declares that the public hearing is now open. The first item is an abatement on the property located at 230 South Sunland Street, APN 477-080-15. Staff report.
Okay, good evening.
I don't think your mic's on. There it is.
This is in regards to 230 South Sunset, APN 477-08015. Property owner, Mr. Jasper Dillon, 10412 Hilder Hill Drive, Bakersfield. RMC ordinance violations at the time were 4-15.101B, 3, and F. B3 is abandoned buildings or structures such as damaged or partially destroyed building or structures not removed or repaired within 120 days after the damage or destruction, or if the removal or repair cannot reasonably accomplish within 120 days have not been commenced within such period and prosecuted diligently toward completion. F, the accumulation, storage of abandoned, wrecked, dismantled, or inoperative vehicles or parts thereof as it's described in this code and Vehicle Code Section 22660. As background, an extensive fire occurred at 230 South Sunset Street, Ridgecrest, California, August 16, 2017. Due to the extensive damage, I was required to red tag the structure as unsafe for human occupancy, case 17-2912. I also made contact with the current owner, Mr. Jasper Dillon, by phone, who did not realize a fire had occurred. Mr. Dillon advised he purchased the property at auction for a small amount and was in the process of restoring the property in order to rent it. As the property did not cost much, he stated he did not have insurance. At the time, I advised Mr. Dillon he would be required to demolish the structure as it appeared to be a total loss within 6 months of that date, August 16, 2017. On May 24, 2018, as nothing had been done to remove the structure or the mobile trailer in the backyard, case 18-1703 was initiated, advising the property owner he must remove, abate the fire-damaged building on the property, the mobile trailer in the backyard, and all trash, junk, and debris from the entire property. Otherwise, the case will be presented to the City of Ridgecrest Planning Commission for approval to abate the property. On June 26, 2018, the notice of pre-abatement public hearing to abate property letter was sent to the property owner via priority mail and received at his address on June 29, 2018. I also emailed the property owner requesting his intentions regarding the property, advising this case was going to the Planning Commission for abatement approval if no action is taken. As of July 11, 2018, no contact had been made by the property owner. On July 11, 2018, contact was made with Lauren Culp, city engineer, requesting he inspect the property to obtain his expert opinion of the structural integrity of it. Mr. Culp performed a field inspection of the structure this same date, which revealed the east side of the structure had a significant number of structural elements such as roof trusses and exterior bearing walls that had been compromised, and other intact elements of the structure had questionable compliance to previous building codes or standards of construction. The extent of the structural and non-structural damage to the structure would not make it economically feasible to reconstruct under 2016 building codes, recommending to demolish the structure to include the structure slab and footings. On July 23, 2018, yesterday, I went by the property and noted the mobile trailer that was in the backyard had been removed. This same date, I called the property owner, who advised he had been out of country and got back last week. I advised him I was taking this to the Planning Commission on July 24, 2018, and he stated he had a buyer for the property. I recommended he be present for the presentation, and he advised he will be present, and he is. Order of abatement to be conducted by the property owner, the complete removal of the structure, and to dispose of all trash, junk, and debris from the entire property caused by the removal. That the abatement be completed or notification obtained by the code enforcement officer that the services of a contract have been obtained and verified to do the abatement no later than August 9, 2018.
Any questions for staff?
Can we hear from Mr. Dillon?
Property owner?
Yes.
Sure,
Yes,
right.
please. Name and address, please.
Jasper Dillon, 10412 Hinder Hill Drive in Bakersfield, California, 93312. What I'd like to ask is if there's a possibility if I can get extension of time because I have a potential buyer. Buyers, actually. They just want the lot itself. And I was going to see if instead of the city trying to do an abatement on it, spending the money on it, see if I can get 3 more months to proceed with the sale.
Any questions for him?
Do you have anything in escrow, Mr. Dillon?
As a matter of fact, I just got back. I was out of the country, and I got back last week, and I got 2 potential buyers on the property, and I've reached out to one of them this morning, and they say they're going to get back to me.
3 months extension seems to be a long time for me. I think maybe So do you think 1 month or 1.5 months would be enough for you?
Because the normal escrow takes about 30 days. I mean, I don't know how long. Just to be on the safe side, I was asking for 3 months.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I
Thank
have
you.
a question. I'm sorry, I have a quick question before you go. These buyers, you said they just want the lot, so do they have plans then to immediately take down this structure, or how can we have a guarantee
Yeah,
that will
I
happen?
told them that the city wants it removed, and they're aware of that. They just want the lot.
Okay, so they have plans to do it immediately
Yes.
if they buy?
Yes.
Any other questions for this individual? Mr. Booth, is it possible to put in our resolution here a time frame? And this is my thought. If he has this property in escrow within 30 days, we'll give him the 3 months, but within that 3 months, the building has to be removed,
I see.
whether by the new buyer or by him. In the event that that does not happen, 30 days, it has to be removed.
That
Okay,
sounds, that
so
sounds
if you're
very
in
good.
escrow, and that's my suggestion, there's not an approval here by the commission, but that's what I'm suggesting, is we'll give you 30 days. If you're in escrow, we'll allow you 90 days. But at the end of that 90 days, which will be the responsibility of the new owner, that building needs to be gone,
Okay.
whether by you or by them, right?
Okay.
Is that reasonable
I have no
from your
issue with
opinion?
that. That seems reasonable.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Anything from the public? Yes, sir.
Ron Strand, City Manager. I do believe that if it goes in escrow and is sold, there is no requirement that's going to be passed on to the new owner. You'd have to start the abatement process over again with that new individual, not unless you require him to put it in his escrow documents that it has to be disposed of or demolished within a certain period of time. Otherwise, you're going to start right back over again.
Okay, so does the abatement, is it the responsibility of the owner, or is it assigned to the property?
Well, the owner has to be notified as part of the process.
So
other
part
words,
of his disclosures in escrow would be the abatement, would it not?
It'd have to be very clear in the escrow paperwork that be part of their escrow instructions, that they'd be required to demolish the building within a certain period of time, or the city then could come in and do it at our cost, and they'd have to reimburse us. Otherwise, we have to start this process all over again.
Which we don't want to do.
Right, because there's a due process. The new owner has due process. So in other words, if he sells the property and then we come in and demolish the building, we haven't given the new owner the time to basically take care of it.
Well, and I understand that. I'm just saying, when I sell a piece of property, there is a disclosure statement that says, are you aware of anything that's wrong, or any liens, or any this and that, or hazardous material, or any of that. This would have to be disclosed there, or that's completely negligent. So if we abate this right now, if we sign the resolution of abatement under these conditions, he has to disclose that in escrow.
True. That was just the point I was trying to make. You have to make
Yeah.
it very clear, because if you don't, we don't want to start over again.
Right. Okay. So that would be my suggestion, commissioners, is to go ahead and abate it under those conditions. The owner would then have to disclose that in escrow as part of his disclosures. So, any other public comment?
Yeah, so
Commissioner comments?
if it's not in escrow within 30 days,
The abatement, that portion of the abatement would be null and void, and it'd go into immediate effect.
with what dates?
30 days. So the end of August.
Okay.
Okay, so that language will need to be put in there. So Any other public comment? Then I'll close the public hearing on this item. And do I have a motion on this abatement? So my motion would be, okay, to approve the abatement, the resolution as written, and add an item 4. On that item 4,
I think you should remove item 3 and replace that with what you are saying.
which one, Solomon?
It's item 3. You should replace that one item.
Yes. That the abatement be conducted will be completed. So we'll eliminate 3 and make a new 3, that abatement will be conducted within 30 days, if not in escrow. If in escrow, he will have 90 days to have the building demolished.
From the date of this,
The date of this hearing. So
Correct.
30 days from today and then 90 days from this day. There are these 2 earmarks. And sir, you need to know that you need to disclose this or the liability will end up with you.
Absolutely. I'm in the real estate business myself.
Okay. Okay, with that addition, so that's my recommendation. So
I make a motion as recommended.
I'll second.
Chairman Cox,
aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Yates,
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris,
Aye.
Commissioner Dehan.
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you, sir, for your time. Thanks, Officer Booth. Okay, proceeding on to item B. I open the public hearing for item B. It's a tentative tract map 7345, consideration of a tentative tract map to create 11 single-family residential lots on 3.82 acres, APN 510-020-07. Staff report, please.
So this item for you is a consideration for a tentative tract map. It's 11 lot subdivision on 3.82 acres. This site was originally a phase of a previous map, and that map has since expired. The new owner has now submitted a new map for consideration. The proposed development meets the categorical exemption because it is consistent with the general plan and zoning designations on a site less than 5 acres and is substantially surrounded by development. The map is consistent with the general plan designation, estate density, single-family residential. The site is physically suited for the type of land division and conforms with the requirements of the municipal code. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve tentative tract map 7345 and the corresponding categorical exemption.
Commissioner comments?
I do have a question though. We mentioned here the vehicular entry into the site would mainly come from Cielo Avenue via Reedy, South Wesley or South Norma Street. A condition of approval has been included that requires the applicant to improve Norma Street. So I didn't see that condition. If you intend to have that in the resolution, or so I didn't see a condition where it says that they have to improve Norma Street. I'm not saying they have to, but if that is the intent, it should be there in the resolution.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
could you please point that out as the number of, on the conditions? I'm
Where
trying to
you
follow you
reading,
in
Solomon?
the numbered conditions.
Page 1.
Okay, so on the resolution,
Yeah, page 1 at the bottom of the last paragraph, it says, a condition of approval has been included that requires the applicant to improve Norma Street. Right at the bottom, right here, this last sentence.
yes, in the resolution, it's condition 9A.
It says right of way, it doesn't say improve South Norma. So right of way is different, I think, right?
No, actually the condition requires the half-street improvements to Norma.
So we
That would be
not-
the curb gutters, the sidewalks, that's the perimeter wall, and the improvements would be to the center line of Norma. Those are standard conditions for tract development, whereby the developer is required to provide half-street improvements, and that would be to the center line of Norma.
I think where he's having a problem with is it's a right-of-way unless the entire street is completed. Is that not correct?
It
Because
would be
they're doing a
half-street right-of-way,
Yeah,
would be the
it's
correct
It's just a verbiage.
designation and identify the limits of the
Okay.
developer's
Just needed that
requirements.
clarification.
Any other commissioner comments?
So from which point to which point are we going to be very clear to them? Because I don't want any disputes later on, so we need to be very clear in what we are saying. So which part are they developing?
Yes, we can further define that.
Okay.
And we could do that by your action tonight in the minutes to indicate that the extent of the improvements would be from the center line of Norma to the edge of right-of-way for Norma on their half-street right-of-way improvements.
Thank you, Mr. Cole.
Commissioners?
Yeah, following suit, 10 and the drainage improvements, I don't see that on the tract map or the tentative tract map. Is that, did I miss that somewhere?
Actually, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, staff does have a recommendation here for a couple of these conditions. We had a meeting with administrative staff, and it's administrative staff's position that the drainage retention requirements be waived. The administrative staff has reviewed the master plan, drainage master plan, as well as the drainage design manual, and feels that the sump requirements are not an absolute requirement made in the master plan or the design manual. And therefore, the recommendation from administrative staff is to waive the requirements for on-site detention.
Should that language be taken out of here then? If we're
Yes,
going to approve
the conditions can be amended to indicate that with, of course, your approval. Staff has some additional recommendations for amending the conditions of approval. If you'd look at, I'm looking directly at the conditions. This is 9B, parentheses, number 1. There's a condition here which indicates additional parkway dedications along South Norma is required for the landscaping and irrigation system per the Ridgecrest Municipal Code. And what administrative staff is suggesting that we are going to try to amend the municipal code to eliminate or discourage irrigation, landscape irrigation, and go with something that's more a xeriscape type of landscaping. Now, that hasn't been totally defined in what that xeriscape or what type of drought-tolerant plants or whatever might be there, but the desire is to do away with irrigated landscaping. Staff thinks that the original requirement in the municipal code was as a result of requiring irrigated landscaping would thus drive a requirement for additional dedication. Therefore, administrative staff believes that we can make a recommendation to our city council that we waive the irrigated landscape requirement, as well as not requiring any additional dedication.
I have a question, Mr. Pope. I want to make sure I understood you right. When you mentioned in 10A Part 1 about master drainage plan and design manual, were you saying in this particular case you did not feel it was necessary to have on-site drainage and that it could be waived? Or were you saying that this is one of the other proposed amendments across the board for the municipal code that you're considering?
Yes, the administrative staff has determined that the drainage master plan is not an absolute requirement for requiring detention on projects, on infill projects, on track maps. So the administrative staff is recommending that this be struck or waived from the conditions.
Is this going to then be made consistently, because I know we've discussed this with other tentative track maps, and how are we planning to address these inconsistencies?
Yes, I believe that is the intent to not impose that condition on development in the future. It's the interpretation of the master plan and the drainage design manual that they do not impose or require that these detention basins be constructed.
Okay. Since I don't have it memorized for my nighttime reading, could you tell me what it does specify and what are our parameters? Because I think we've been operating off of a system of assumptions, and I just want to make sure I know what my left and right seat parameters are.
Yes. Well, the master plan, the overall master plan, the main document, is a global view of our entire drainage basin and what improvements are necessary to handle flood events. So it's a very macro view of our entire city and of our drainage basin. It looks at the entire tributary area and comes up with recommendations for how to handle that type of flooding to our area. It has recommendations for detention, and that detention primarily is off-site. Most of our drainage problems it comes from outside of our city limits. Therefore, the drainage master plan is more a global view of our needs, of what impacts we have and what needs are necessary to take care of our of drainage tributary to our city. The design manual is more specific to those sub areas within our master plan, and gives direction to the developer as engineer on how to handle those on-site drainage facilities. Now, it doesn't completely discount the possibility of detention, but it does give specific criteria on how to evaluate the drainage that is tributary to their project, and gives design examples on how to look at your drainage area and how to calculate what the drainage might be for your project as well as tributary to your area, and offers recommendations. And one of those is to have detention. Now, not all projects, however, I think are warrant a detention basin, such as this particular project. It's a relatively small project, and its contribution would be relatively small. And it would probably be a hardship to require some sort of park sump on this particular development. So the way administrative staff is looking at this now is that these projects, not all projects, are required to have detention. However, there is criteria for evaluating the drainage and criteria for how to handle that drainage in our drainage design manual.
So then, if I understand you correctly, are you saying this is going to be like track map dependent based on their location within town, of whether or not, you know, like you said, if they're at the outskirts where maybe they're higher risk for tributary flooding? Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes, you know, there is going to be, there's going to have to be engineering principles applied to any project, and there's going to be some absolutes that are going to come out as a result of reviewing case-by-case projects and what the flood potential might be for those projects, or what kind of runoff a particular project will generate. And those will be engineering principles that would dictate the potential or the need for on-site detention. That is truly an engineering standard of practice to look at how you're going to take care of that which you generate. And that would include either building flood control facilities or detention facilities. So it doesn't completely discount the potential for detention facilities.
Right, but you're saying that it's still going to be track map independent as to whether we'll need to make recommendations for on-site detention or not. I'm just trying to understand a framework going forward.
Yes, well, each one is going to be unique. Each one is going to have different potential for flooding and how to protect their site for flooding. And each one is going to be different for the amount of runoff that's going to be generated. So it's really a case-by-case review as to when detention facilities may be required, or the construction of what's called for within our master plan, storm drain facilities.
What does the municipal code say? Can you quote the municipal code?
The municipal code is silent
detention?
on, the municipal code is actually silent on, the municipal code was generated prior to the drainage master plan and does not include any language requiring the construction of flood control or drainage facilities. There is a Chapter 21 that requires us to comply to FEMA and designate a floodplain administrator. However, there is not an absolute statement within the municipal code that dictates the construction of flood control or detention facilities.
Well, here's my concern, because I'm listening to what she's asking, and you're going a long way around. Telling her that we have had the hospital twice before us that's required, and they're small developments, water detention. We have had Mom's Furniture that was required, which is they added a building, was required water retention. We've had track maps in College Heights, which Mr. Witten has represented. We have required water retention. We have development that's already up there that their water, they didn't require any detention, and their water is coming down, and the maps that we've had to work with him on, he's had to do a bigger sump to try and do it. So now we've got something that's in the heart of this development, and yes, it's only 11 lots, and we're not asking them to hold any portion. I'm understanding we're not going to do a 100-year, but a 10-year event or something to where we've required others to do it, but this one's small enough. And here's my concern overall to the commission, to Mr. Witten, is if I decide to phase a development or I decide to do it in small increments, I can be exempt from any flood control because 11 units is not big enough to retain any water. Is that what you're telling us?
I'm saying
I'm afraid
that,
we're going to set a precedence here that says I can do smaller pieces, take a smaller bite out of each one of these and get them approved, and I don't have to do any of this.
Well, any phasing would first of all require a parent map, which would show the entire development in which the hydraulics or the hydrology for that project would be evaluated in whole. And certainly if there were enough of a drainage, significant drainage by phase, there would be some engineering principles that would be applied for looking at that phase, possibly a detention for that phase, but an overall plan for the entire project. A good example of that is the projects up along College Heights. I believe there's Tom Martin had a series of tracks up there that have been graded. You can see those along College Heights there. And there's large detention basin down at Springer and College Heights.
Right.
And in the course of developing the phases there are going to be phased detention facilities there. And in that case, engineering principles apply in that the drainage from the upstream would cause damage to the downstream grading that's occurred there. And so naturally they're going to want to try to control that and protect their investment in the graded pads below. So
Well, where is staff, we're going to take X amount of acreage, what is it, 3.7 acres, and we're going to put it under asphalt, concrete, and roof line. Where is that water going?
Well, we've looked at the drainage pattern for that, and it appears that it's all going to go to Norma. It's going to head
It's
north
gonna go
along
north.
Norma. Yes, and looking at what drainage that's tributary to their site, it's a relatively insignificant amount. There's a few homes along just to the south of it, south of them in the first phase, Phase A, that's tributary to it, that would turn down Shenandoah. I think it's Wesley Street. There's some homes along Wesley, and those homes would be tributary to it. But it seemed like in evaluating this that administrative staff felt that it'd be it's not an absolute within our drainage master plan nor our design manual to require a sump for this particular development.
Any other questions from commissioners? Mr. Whitten?
Well, I'd like to throw my 2 cents in with regard to this little discussion, because this has been a hot topic in my office this week. We're working on improvement plans for an apartment project that'll probably be in front of the Planning Commission at the next meeting, the Red Rock project. And one of the conditions we anticipated on that project was a requirement for a detention basin. But the project sits right next to the Bowman Wash. I mean, the Bowman Wash is 50 feet away from the project. And so a guy on my staff, and his name is Clark Farr, he wrote the Kern County Hydrology Manual. He was the FEMA representative for Kern County for 15 years. He knows the flooding around here like nobody else does. And he looked at the county, or at the city's master plan, and used the same drainage runoff criteria. And what he found, and basically what he did is he showed me a hydrograph, which is a plot of the runoff along a stream bed. So if you start at a certain time period, the storm starts here, and you look at it over a 48-hour period, if you have a uniform rainfall across a watershed, which is what the city's drainage manual is predicated on, you have a uniform rainfall, the water in the stream starts to flow, and it flows, and it peaks, and then it drops off. So visualize a curve like this of time versus flow in the Bowman Wash. And what we determined was that the city's flood manual, or its hydrology, is pretty accurate. I mean, the numbers he came up with were very close. He came up with about 900 cubic feet per second peaking out in the Bowman Wash in a 100-year storm. Our project was going to spit about 15 cubic feet per second into the Bowman Wash at about this point in time right here, and the peak was going to hit about 3 hours later. So any detention that we do on site is going to have an insignificant amount of impact, because our peak hits here, and when the peak hits here, our peak is gone. Our site has already discharged the water into the Bowman Wash, and so detaining this water and shaving the peak off does nothing about this 900 CFS, because the drainage area upstream, way outside of city limits, is huge. Most of the water, you guys remember the flooding that happened in Bowman, right at Bowman and China Lake? The credit union got its teller banks all flooded out and everything. All that water came from way out in the county. It didn't come from the city. And so when you have these big flood events that basically cover the whole valley, a few little detention basins around town are not going to make a whit's worth of difference in that kind of scenario. But they cost money to maintain. And the case in this particular site, this 11-lot subdivision in a 10-year storm is going to put out about 3 cubic feet per second of water, which running down Norma Street is going to be about this deep. it's really nothing. What's really going to run down Norma Street is all the water coming from a mile or two up the hill on the BLM property that comes flooding down through there. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is the idea of the detention basins is, as Lauren said, there are certain parts of town where it would make sense and other parts of town where it's just a futile effort. You just need to build the houses high and get out of the way because the water is coming from someplace else. So I appreciate that the city staff has been looking at this situation, because I think I don't know where the policy came from, but I think it was kind of a knee-jerk reaction to the flooding that happened about 5 years ago. And after that, everybody said, oh, we got to do something about this. But I think when you really look at the way the flooding actually occurs in the city, most of the flow comes from well outside of town. And so these small detention basins don't really put a dent in the problem. They just they add expense to projects, and then they have to be maintained. If they're not kept clean and the facilities looked after, then they become ineffective anyway.
I think maybe it was designed more after the 84, I think it was, flood. Because that's when the base was inundated. That's when we had the west side of town that had 8-foot water lines above the door, top of the door. And you're right on the amount of water, but what I'm looking at is all the older section of College Heights was not required any detention at all. Mm-hmm. And so all of that is running, and now we're adding yours, but yet we've asked some of these subdivisions to do pocket parks and do detention, and it flies in the face of what we've done in the last 2, 3, 4 years, that we're not asking them to do something.
Well, in this particular case, the tract map the water from this piece is going to end up in the detention basin on the tract map that you guys approved for Jim Rock about 6 months ago.
Right. Down
at the corner of Kendall and Norma. That particular project, we designed a sump in there that will serve as detention, but most of that water going into that sump is going to be coming from up the hill, well beyond the subdivision, because what comes down through there, most of that water is coming from further up the hill on the undeveloped land up above this project. The amount of runoff produced by this kind of development, these are large lots. They don't drain to the street. I mean, the water that falls in the backyard stays in the backyard. The street runoff will continue on down the street, but compared to what's coming from on up the hill, the amount of water put out by the subdivision is not that significant.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions for him or for engineering?
For engineering, I just need one clarification, Mr. Carl. So going back to developing Norma Street, are we asking them to develop any of this part or this part? Or
half that street.
Half that street from here?
South Norma, right.
It's just along their frontage.
So this part then?
Yes.
And this part is going to be unpaved, right?
Yes. Administrative staff has, we have had discussions on that unpaved portion, and what we would like to do is discuss that with the developer to see if there's some way we can work out some agreement where we can have them pave that and credit them in some fashion for paving that unimproved portion of roadway.
Yeah, that's a clarification I needed. Thank you.
So we're basically asking for number 10 to go away. We're also asking for the landscaping lighting district to be deferred, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is correct. We're asking that on condition 15E, that we're asking that the Planning Commission make a recommendation to City Council to also defer the annexation, and allow them to go ahead and record, but deferring annexation into a lighting landscape maintenance district. It's administrative staff's desire to try to attempt to get a citywide lighting district, and therefore staff feels that we should offer this developer the same opportunities that we offered the Warrens as well as the other tracks that they took action to defer the lighting landscape maintenance district.
Sure.
So does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
So we're looking at 9B1, waiving that, and as well as all of 10, as well as anything with 13 we need to change? 13A, anything there? Because that's referring to street lighting. Just wanted your eyes on that.
Well, I think it says that it's deferring, does it not?
It says coordinate with.
Well, we still require street lighting to be installed.
Okay,
It's
so
just
nothing
that-
needs to be there. And then 15E.
Yes.
Is that all?
No, we had one other, and it was regarding 9E for the removal of existing partially constructed wall and curb and gutter along the south Norma Street frontage. We realize that existing partially constructed wall, there's a portion of it that has to remain. It's retaining some soil there for a slope in a backyard. And so what the intent of that is there's still some footings and rebar for what appears to be an attempt to construct that wall along the entire frontage there. And so we're really trying to indicate that it's the unfinished portions of wall that needs to be removed, and the new wall constructed per the typical section shown in the tentative map.
So remove existing.
Yes, actually the footings and rebar that was appears to be constructed to try to continue that same wall along
Well, I
this
understand.
frontage.
I'm just trying to get a wording here. So
Yeah,
we can do a
Warren,
resolution.
Why don't just leave it the way it is? We've already got the plans for this project about 90% done, and the wall plan, we're just going to modify the wall plan. That wall's all coming out, except there's one portion that Lauren and I know has to remain, because it's buttressing the lot up above, and we can't take it out without undermining an existing wall on an adjacent piece of property.
Can't we just take E out because B covers it, doesn't it? Design and construct masonry block wall. Well, that's landscaping. Excuse me.
Yeah, just leave it in there. We'll take care of it. It's understood that most of the wall that's already there has to be removed. It's in the wrong place. It's too close to the street. It was constructed well into the city right of way. We're going to take it all out. We're just going to leave a little segment in because we can't undermine an existing wall that's already on the lot to the south. So I'm okay with it just as it reads right now.
Okay. Except
Mr.
for
Chairman?
10. Except for 10.
Right, 10 would be deleted.
Sir?
Mr. Chairman, may I? We also, administrative staff has gone through these conditions, and they also recognize on 12E that the requirement of a brow ditch along the top of the cut slopes on the south bordering may not be necessary. There's an existing block wall along there. However, administrative staff did recognize or found that there's some of the residents along that south boundary do have wall penetrations with appears drain pipes that penetrate the wall, which would affect the downstream owners for this particular tract. So we'd just like to change it to actually just strike that requirement of 12E. I discussed the condition that was found in the field with Mr. Witten. He recognizes that, and he's going to have the developer handle that situation with the adjoining neighbor.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Witten? Anything else from the commission?
I have one request.
Yes, sir.
So we don't really have a resolution of 15E. how's it going to be changed? Is it just going to say that could it say something like the owner will not object to annexation into a street lighting district? I was talking to Lauren about this at the city, in the city of Bakersfield. They have these same kind of districts, and normally what will happen is the developer will sign a consent letter stating, and the letter will be recorded stating that he consents to having all the lots annexed into a lighting district. And this is while he's the owner of all 11 lots. And that way, that consent is passed on to
The property owners?
it's attached to the property. And so that way the owner can say, yes, I consent to annexation into whatever lighting district the city puts together. The city can take its time and put together something that it wants to do, and when it gets it established, then it'll execute the annexation consent at that time. So I don't know if that's the process that we would go through here, but the way 15E is written right now, it may get in the way of
It's not showing a deferment at all.
right. So
Lauren, how do you want to word that?
We would request that the Planning Commission make a recommendation to the City Council to defer
E.
the annexation into the Lighting Landscape Maintenance District 2012-1.
Yeah, just defer E.
Correct.
Okay.
Do we want to have a
And
backup?
staff is going to look into what Mr. Wooten has.
Well, a deferment isn't a permanent.
Right, okay. I was just wondering with the suggestion if there's some other, do we want to have something else coding it right now until that deferment goes through of that it would be under the property owner? Because I don't know how long that's going to take for us to get a final resolution on that. Is it very soon?
I know that the administrative staff does want to move on that fairly quickly, and it was kind of looked upon, and as far as a time frame, that by the time the development would start construction or even be close to finishing any kind of construction, that we should know whether we're going to be successful with a citywide landscaping district. So.
But we're not there then, correct?
No, we're not. No.
So do we want to have some other contingency plan written in until deferment is, the final decision is made?
We
on
have
that?
considered the first, that the annexation be completed prior to the first occupancy permit request,
Okay,
such that
we have time.
you still have one owner, one developer that'd still be responsible, that real properties wouldn't have been sold to require multiple ballots to be cast, that we still have one ballot, and to condition the annexation upon or prior to the first occupancy permit for the first unit.
Okay, thank you. I have another comment to make, going back to the drainage, number 10. Obviously, we're not hydrologists, and so I would like to make a recommendation to staff. Could we have something put in our municipal code that's a little more sturdy in terms of, I don't think that just because we've always done it, we should continue to always do it. I don't think that's a good enough reason, but something that is saying, okay, each track map, we're going to have to make drainage considerations, whether it's going to be A, B, C, the following options determined based on these engineering principles. I think something should be in our municipal code about that so that we have consistency for the future.
Yes, Commissioner, you're absolutely correct, and staff has recognized that deficiency within the municipal code. And currently, staff is meeting with our legal counsel, and we're crafting language that we think needs to be amended within the municipal code, as well as added to, and drainage is certainly one of those elements that's looked at to be added to the municipal code.
Okay, thank you.
While we're
Commissioners?
talking about amendments, would it make more sense just to leave these out when you're looking at a resolution than putting them on and then striking them here
Well,
in the future?
At this point, staff doesn't have that luxury. The municipal code doesn't offer staff any flexibility or discretion on ordinance. So
Okay.
unfortunately, I'm forced to look at each developer and be very consistent to exactly what the municipal code says.
Okay.
And then with recommendation from administrative staff or recommendation by the planning commission, if there's an ordinance that looks like it needs to have some amendment to it, to make a recommendation to council to waive or amend or do something relative to that ordinance.
Okay.
But
So you're
I'm
saying-
forced, right now the municipal code doesn't even offer the city manager discretion on ordinance requirements. So we're trying to look at our municipal code and possibly see if there's some amendments that could be drafted that give staff a little more flexibility to look at such things as variances or minor modifications or things that would qualify for administrative staff or directors to make a determination that that particular condition or requirement doesn't apply.
So back to Jessica's original question, is there a municipal code or is there a statute that requires you to put this in, and what does it say?
I'm not really
You
prepared
just said
to.
that you just said that you're compelled to put it in there.
Oh, I'm
because
sorry.
you cannot change the existing codes.
Oh,
I'm
I'm sorry, I
asking you what the
understand now.
code is.
I wasn't catching on. I understand your question now.
And the only reason I'm saying this is because that was her original question, as I understood it. Because if we have a code that says we need to do this, we do have the power to waive it on a condition. But I want you to understand if there's a code, which is what it hasn't been kind of milly-nilly that we've required this. Can you cite her the code?
I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to cite it by book and page or verse, but
basically it says that we are required water detention on developments.
So that-
As it sits right now. What administrative staff would like to see is some wiggle room. And so rather than take the whole thing as a lump sum, they're asking for this on this particular parcel tonight. And that was the only concern that I was bringing up, is the aspect, are we setting a precedence without changing it first?
Right. Looks like we have.
Mr. Strand.
I do not believe that the master drainage plan is located in our ordinance. It is a plan that was passed by resolution that does have some direction of how we should be developing our drainage plan within the city for a 100-year event. So it's not specifically in there. I think the way staff is going to be looking at this is we're going to be requiring the developers to come in when they have, proposed track maps with a drainage plan. And then based upon that drainage plan, we'll then make recommendations based upon the master drainage plan on what should be done. So it shouldn't be, it happens all the time. And I think where this came to a head with me was with Starbucks. We're requiring, when Starbucks did a refurbishment of the business from Pizza Hut to Starbucks, we required a sump or whatever it was. And it just didn't make any sense. So instead of having a thou shall on every, we should be looking at what does that area represent? What's a tributary? What's coming in? How's it going through? And where is it coming out? So I think where staff's going is that we're not going to waive all these. We're just going to try getting a little bit better information so then Lauren can make a little more informed decision on whether or not we need to do this or not and what needs to be there. But if you look at the master drainage plan, it does have a series of things that we should be doing as a city to protect ourselves. And it does somewhat discourage just putting small sumps everywhere because it really wants to do more of a larger detention type plan. So that's where we're heading. And in this case here, it just didn't seem wise to take a whole lot and make a park sump out of it next to the desert at the edge of a development. It just didn't make any sense for us to pursue that in this case. Doesn't mean we won't in larger developments, but I think it needs to be on a case-by-case basis, not on a global, we do it on everything all the time. So that's where we're coming from.
Well, if I had the city attorney here, I would probably ask, if we approve this without refining the resolution by the city council, for those small, and I don't want to name the businesses, you mentioned one of them, and I mentioned one earlier, where we have required, and that has come at an expense to them, do we open ourselves up by saying yes, but this small building was required to do this at an expense of $40,000. Is the city going to be liable, or are they going to be viewed as offering preferential treatment or consideration to any group or class of people?
I don't think so, because the master drainage plan does state that the public works director can put off-site improvements even outside the city limits to address development. So I think this is just a change in philosophy of how we're looking at the master plan. I don't think sooner or later, how do you change your philosophy if you don't change what you do?
But that would have to be changed by the city council, because that verbiage is going to have to be corrected by the city council, correct?
I think the verbiage is already in there, can be interpreted that way. When you read the master drainage plan and its subsequent manual, it doesn't state that everything has to have specifically all the time. There has to be consideration of where it's coming from, how it's coming through, and where it's going out.
So that might be a recommendation to staff, that if that's the premise that we're going on, that it's provided to us so that we can make that determination?
Yeah, I think our intent is that we're going to start requiring, the drainage plan on these track maps, so we have it in hand instead of asking for it after the fact.
Okay.
So we can make better decisions earlier on and be able to work with the developer by protecting the city, but also not by creating exorbitant costs to the developer after the fact.
Oh, and I'm for development, don't get me wrong. I want to make sure that our action here tonight doesn't create another problem for the city. We solve this development's problem, but we then open the floodgates for others to take a look at it, and why them and not me, and that's where I'm not wanting to go.
Correct. But I still think that we need to be looking at these on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Anyway.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
I understand what the plan is. When we get this, we are to approve a tentative tract map that doesn't show what
Condition 10.
these conditions are. So if we approve the tract map, these conditions don't apply. So they need to, there needs to be a direct relationship between what's on this paper and what's on the tract map. That's all. That's what I was saying. So
I agree.
If we don't need, if drainage is not an issue, then that should not be in the resolution. Because then we're going to just spend more time crossing
Doing what
these
we
things
just
out.
did.
Right. Correct. So if that can be left off, then we can actually just approve the tract map and move on.
Right.
Makes sense?
Any other thoughts or comments from commission? Jessica?
In regards to the precedents, which I agree is a concern, the only thing I can say about this one that may stand out from the prior ones is its location is in its favor. And for us to be able to approve it without the drainage versus maybe being in a more interior location until there is something more solidified in the code. Is that a good theory or not? Just wanted to throw it out there.
No, I think that's good. I think your
All
thoughts
right.
are good. Any other comments? Any other comments from the public? Don't all rush up at once. Then I'll declare the public hearing on this closed and would entertain a motion. The staff has made a motion to approve resolution of the Planning Commission, the City of Ridgecrest, to approve tentative tract map 7. Oh, it's not. I've got a corrected one. Bear with me.
7345.
Added papers. This one? No, we're down here. Tentative track map 7345.
Chairman, I have one correction here.
Yes.
Go to section 3 of the resolution. It says the proposed track map 7320. It has to be 7345. You see here?
7345, yes. That's on that corrected one. Okay. So staff is recommending, do I have a motion to approve with any conditions or corrections?
Make a motion to approve with corrections.
I'll second.
Which corrections?
All corrections.
So we're taking out 10, right?
Yeah, so in chronologically, so 9B.
And we're deferring 15E is defer.
9B, 10, 12E, 15E defer.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Did you get all those, Heather?
I did.
Okay.
I still second.
Okay.
Chairman Cox,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Yates,
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris,
Aye.
Commissioner Dehan,
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you, Darrell, for your time.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Okay, moving on to number 8, discussion and other items. Tentative track map 1220, extension, consideration for a 1-year extension to the tentative parcel map 12200 of 5-lot commercial subdivision of a single existing parcel located totaling 5.06 acres, APN 067-040-22. Staff report.
Okay, so this item for consideration is a 1-year extension of the tentative parcel map 12200. This is a 5-lot commercial subdivision. This map was originally approved in July of 2016, and the applicant is applying for a 1-year extension to complete the required improvements on the map. If approved, this extension would allow the developer an extension date of July 24th, 2019.
Okay, for the commission, this is the Warren Automotive subdivision that's going on next to Home Depot. And they're in the process of doing the improvements currently. So they're asking for an extension on this. Any questions from the commission? So then I would propose that any comment from the public? I would propose that we approve this extension and approve the resolution to extend that. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Chairman Cox,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam,
Abstain.
Commissioner Yates,
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris,
Aye.
Commissioner Dehan,
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to item 9, commissioner items and comments. Committee reports. Jessica, were you at any?
We didn't have any in the past month. We didn't have Parks and Rec or infrastructure, so no.
Thanks again, Darrell, for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Mr. Ferris?
We did not meet either.
Cecil?
We didn't meet.
We didn't meet.
We didn't either.
I think everybody's on
The
vacation.
city went on vacation.
Everybody's on vacation.
Okay. Any commissioner comments at all on tonight's proceedings or procedures?
I have one, and maybe as a staff question follow-up from last month, has there been any movement on getting something written out for questions from the public in the future so that we don't have another situation where citizen goes and requests information, because I have heard multiple complaints about that office in our city, and not giving full amount of information, or because a comment was made last month that, like in medicine, if you tell a patient to do something and they don't, it's on them, it's not on you. No, actually, I'm still liable as a clinician, because if I'm not very emphatic, if it's something that maybe for us we can consider it as a high cost investment, but let's say it could be a high disability or morbidity mortality issue, and I don't stress to them, I don't get them follow up, I don't call the pharmacist. You have to do your due diligence sometimes in those cases, and when all else fails, if it's not in the chart, it didn't happen. And that's what all my credibility when I go to a court is on. If it's not in the chart, it didn't happen. And I was thinking about that more since last month. And some of these situations, I wonder if could we open ourselves up to liability in other ways if accurate information or full amount of information is not given to our citizens. And I think the best way to ensure that would be to have some kind of protocol of, here's what the code says, it's in your hand, now you know. I don't see what could be wrong with that, to give our citizens the power of more information of what our municipal code is.
So what if they say you did not view again? So there is a proof for that, Jessica, again.
So maybe some signature that, yes, I've received information on this.
Well, I think, although I like the idea, I'd be concerned about bottlenecking, the limited staff. Because now if you're requiring a signature, somebody just comes in and requests information. They didn't build anything, they're not going to do anything, it turns out to be too expensive. Not only are we requiring to collect it, now we're also requiring to store it, and you're going to have to archive it. And in the event that something comes up, then you've got to go back and research it. So now in the case of last week, I asked her specifically, when you came to the city, did they tell you that you could build this or not? And she says, no, we could not build that because it did not meet city code. Now, they didn't go into specifics, and you're absolutely correct. They didn't go into specifics and say, well, we have a 10-foot utility setback, and then we have, or easement, and then we have a 20-foot setback, which they may not have ever understood. But they were told that no, they could not be given a building permit, and they built it anyway. And so they take that liability on themselves by ignoring what the person at the desk offered them as information. I think it's a good idea to have a handout sheet, but I'm not sure that I would be excited about requiring staff to take a signature and get an archive. Everybody that comes in, it's a matter of procedure. We're giving them the information, and so nobody can come back. If they came and they requested information, they automatically get it. And so they can never claim that I was never told. But I don't think it would be a good idea to ask staff to archive, and then we would end up asking them to research. I think that would be cumbersome to ask them to do that. But I think the idea is good as a handout. Did we do anything with that?
Staff has been provided with a handout to assist people, and it's more of a visual so that perhaps they can understand what setback means if they have difficulty.
Good.
She said she had something in her desk, but she said she never gave it to him.
Yeah, and so then you get in a case
she had literature in her desk.
One person's word against the other.
And that's true, but the applicant was still told that they couldn't build. And so, as a body, I look at us as a body, we either enforce the codes that we're given or we don't. Now, in some cases, conditions, we have the power to change or minimize conditions, but it's like Lauren was saying, a municipal code, we should not, as officers of the city, change the municipal code or change the building code or approve it, because that's a different thing. We're here to enforce it. What we get to change is conditions, if we want to change conditions. So I think that suggestion is a really good suggestion. And I hear what you're saying, so I'm not trying to minimize that. But, on the same token, she was told no.
Yeah, I don't want to get into it. That's not what was said, but It wasn't said that way. So that's where the whole confusion was. It was a miscommunication. So.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Future agenda items. Do you want to go over these? The tentative track map 6818.
So next month we will have the tentative track map 6814 extension. The Red Rock project wasn't able to come tonight because the development agreement is still with attorneys. So we hope that that will be heard next month. We are also looking at another project at the Villa Crest. It's apartments over next to Red Rock. So we have that, and there is a site plan for a hotel.
Any details on that?
Location?
Location.
The location, it will be across Shadow Lake from where the hospital emergency room expansion, right there.
Isn't there a building already there except for just the...
It's right behind that automotive parts.
Between
Right.
AutoZone and the hotel.
Yes.
That
Oh,
field.
okay.
Okay, that
Okay.
empty field.
Okay.
Hotel.
Um,
Site map for hotel.
future and past project status report. Lauren, do you have any of those?
Yes, I can. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I can report on a couple of projects. The Sunland project the bids were opened and we evaluated the bid. We only had one bid on the job. We looked at the process and we discovered that the consultant had made an error in that the project had not been noticed in a widely distributed newspaper twice. And by government code, we are required to notice in a widely distributed newspaper twice and have a minimum bid period of 3 weeks. And due to that irregularity, we had to reject all bids. The administrative staff has recommended that we re-advertise in either November, December, with the hope that an off-peak construction period would attract more paving contractors and be possibly in a better bid environment than what we experienced. We anticipate that the construction then would be somewhere around the 1st of April, and that's for the Sunland CMAQ project between Bowman and Dolphin. We're opening bids tomorrow. That project is the ADA improvements to Ridgecrest Boulevard. So we'll be analyzing those bids and taking that to City Council, I believe, the third Wednesday in August. We do have Starbucks we've got the contractor widening the driveway there at Starbucks. I believe they poured concrete today. I believe the church is on stop paving on schedule to do the paving then, the widening for the driveway. Those are the projects that I can give you some sort of immediate status of where we're at on those few projects.
Thank you. I'd like to thank staff for working with the church and Starbucks and taking care of Jessica's request on that handout at the city. I appreciate staff's willingness to listen to our ideas and move it forward. So, any other thoughts from the commission? If not, then I'll call this adjourned at 7:23.
With its striking design and advanced technology, start a road trip with up to 7 passengers in the 2018 Outlander, or be adventure capable and energy efficient with the all-new 2018 Outlander PHEV. Hurry into your local Mitsubishi Motors dealer